Thank you. It was so interesting to know the kind of things you all are doing. For me, I feel very old and redundant sometimes for being so disconnected. And the last, I think, 3 years now, not meeting people in flesh and blood and trying to connect through the Zoom world or the online world, which I'm really bad at. I feel every other person I meet is brilliant and managing so well in that world, while I'm still struggling. Every day I'm like struggling to open my laptop, connect to people through it. But it's really nice. Thanks to you guys for actually doing a physical event. I've been terribly missing it. I realized we've been like missing so much of meeting people. And I'll probably just finish off the space because it's one thing. It's been one part of my journey in my life. Probably, like I always say, if I weren't here today, I would have probably been an architect because that's what interested me first during my college days, at least. And that was the time I met Kannade. And when I was a very young girl, when I was probably 18, 19 years old when I met Kannade, because I read an article about Kannade in a Kannada magazine. And I found his idea of working in earthquake places and making earthquake-resistant buildings pretty interesting. And I felt I should probably explore architecture as a career for my lifetime so I could do something interesting. And Kannade was brilliant. He just allowed me to spend time in his office. I lived in Cantonment and his office was in Cunningham Road. Just because he saw that, okay, this girl is interested in something. And as much as he knew that I'm not likely to take architecture as a profession, he did allow me to spend time, talk and understand. I would go on site visits with him just like that and then just try to understand how they are. So that's where I think I picked up the basics of construction. As much as my dad was a civil engineer, I didn't bother to learn anything from him. But from Kannade, whose work I found extremely interesting, and then when we reached a point in time in life where we could actually buy a piece of land in Bangalore, which itself was one uphill task for us, took around 15 years of slogging in all possible ways to earn enough money to buy land here. And finally, we could buy after 2 years of talking, negotiating with them. And then the first thing I did was went back to Kannade sir's office. And I said, now I have land and I want to do something about it. So this was all discussion with Kannade, executed by us, by me, trying to get masons, workers, standing in the Kanakpura Road junction, picking up material, getting masons and people along with me in my car and trying to get this all done. So I guess I spent around 2.5 years, me and my husband spent 2.5 years trying to do all this. And at some point we stopped because we didn't know whether we have finished the place or is it complete. I said, there's no point in trying to have this finished look to anything. And we said, okay, let's just live here and then figure out things as we move on. Yeah. So that's about the place. And the other thing, I'll just probably give a small background of why Buffalo Back happened and how I got into agriculture, because by qualification, I'm a chartered accountant. I guess I was fortunate. I did not dislike my job. I was not unhappy with my journey in the corporate. I spent 7 years there. It was a good time that I had. But yes, coming from where I have been exposed to, like through my growing up years, like I landed up in the Bannerghatta Zoo at age 15. And my connect with the zoo has been strong since then. I went from school, where we all went on a cycling expedition from school to Bannerghatta Zoo. And I was fascinated by the idea of a zoo. Because at that point in time, as somebody who was transitioning in from 14 years to 15 years, my imagination of the Bannerghatta Zoo was very different. Yeah. I still hold that imagination of the place. So the place was fascinating for me. So the fascination towards animal life and plant life and how interesting it can be, and how, as somebody who grew up in the urban space, could actually imagine a space being in my backyard. And I knew I could, if I always said, okay, if I could live there, I could live with the elephants. So that kind of sparked a lot of, I think that remained in my head for a long time. So the next thing we purchased when we could afford a piece of land was a piece of land in the Bannerghatta office. After 2-3 years of hands-on farming, trying to understand how do you work with the soil first, and live in a forest next, and live in a space where you know that every cropping season elephants are going to come there. So that was another journey, another 2-3 years of figuring out how to coexist or live there in a place that you love so much. So after that, I think we just at some point decided we knew that we had to come back here. So we focused a little more on tree-based farming so that we have something happening there even if we are not there, because that way trees are very forgiving. But then I think the whole exposure to farming gave me a perspective of, one is it gave me an opportunity to be working with farmers who live in our village, interacting with them on a daily basis, trying to be with them, trying to understand what they are doing, trying to learn from them. Yeah. I think that is where the deeper interest into farming, understanding agriculture, and trying to figure out this whole however you view it. Today, food is viewed from different lens. It's an industry, it's a sector, and then the organic food industry is one cog in that wheel of that whole corporatish way of selling food and making food today. So there are a lot of nuances to it. So it has been overwhelming for me from day one, and even today the whole sector is like overwhelming for me, because we have tried to understand the whole view of it, from growing till selling till cooking. How do you make sense of everything? How do you actually see it? There's the one classical way of, like how you were mentioning about, there's a view of this problem solution mode, which is what most of us are tuned into. We are looking at ways of, okay, now let's get into identifying problems here and probably find solutions there. But over a period of time, I was personally, and even as a team, we were not really comfortable on this problem solution mode. Yeah. Because many a times we felt that if at all we are looking at it like that, Swiggy seemed to have better solutions. Amazon seemed to have better solutions. It does seem like, apparently it seems like they seem to come up with better solutions than we are able to come up as a small team of people who are trying to explore things in with different views. And we have these multiple points of views through which we explore them. So that's when it was very important for me to understand the whole developmental language also of what is this social inclusion that's important, what is this environmental justice that we all talk about, but then how do you actually make it work? How do you actually put those in practice? Yeah. Because we see a lot of documentation, we see a lot of things happening. Now with the social media, we see a lot of people talking about it, a lot of conversations happening. Like this conversation is a lot about how we view a food system probably a little differently. But then how do you actually put it in practice, make sense of it, take people along with you, even if it is 10 people, 20 people, 100 people that you're working with. And then comes the idea of scaling it. Yeah. How do you scale it? And should you scale it? I mean, there are a lot of these questions to answer. So more than a problem solution thing, we said, no, I think the thing that we should focus on is questioning. Just questioning things and understanding that are we capable, or are we even capable of exploring solutions towards those, or answers to those questions together, and arriving at some common points where we all are comfortable doing certain things. Like, for example, plastic. It's been a huge challenge for us. As much as there's a very small probably bit of that experience that we have gone through, which I generally share, because plastic is converse the most nowadays when it comes to dry waste and waste management. But there are so many things that we have been trying to do, especially when it comes to one of our very important, we also work certain things, we work on a very project mode because we have to do certain things to reach some impacts. So one of the projects that we have been doing for the last 2.5 years is setting up this bakery in the Ragihalli forest area. It's been very challenging for us, because right from trying to plan on, question ourselves on, does a bakery make sense for village rural women? How is it going to help them? Yeah. And is it only about making something for a consumer who's going to eat it? Is it important? Or is there a shortage of cookies here, baked products here, that we should also be catering to that need? So there were multiple questions that we had to navigate. And then we had to focus on a specific intervention which was needed. These women, when we did a study on their time, their availability, their income, and how much of what is going into their family income or their own personal financial independence, Uh, the women in the farmers in Ragihalli mostly practice sericulture. Silk is what is done there. And the women have substantial amount of time. And it's increasing over the years now, basically because the silk board is very busy bringing in new GM technologies and better ways of managing, because silk is extensively post-farm. On-farm activities of silk is very, very minimal. So the women they don't have labor. They don't have opportunities for labor. Yeah. And we haven't really strengthened our education system or our ability to create enterprises or job opportunities in villages where the women have alternates. I mean, if sericulture is developing, it's not easy for them to go find another job the next day. So these developments are something that we had to really be watchful of, aware of, and say that, okay, now there is no option for this generation of women. For the next 10 years, they don't have an option. So rather focus on building some skills in them. Yeah. Some skill which they can relate to. Yeah. So cooking seems inevitable. It's something that they're comfortable doing. They cook very well in their homes, and it's just about learning newer ways of cooking, using newer equipment. So how about trying baking, trying frying? Because frying is also not something they do regularly in their homes. So, and these are the only two ways you could make processed products which can have decent shelf life. So we couldn't think of fresh food. So we said, okay, let's stick to frying and probably those laddus which have longer shelf life and bakery, and then we went ahead with the project. So all that they needed was this little conducive ecosystem, something that could open up doors for them and tell them that, okay, here are opportunities and go explore. And so in the 2 years, they actually formed a federation of their own, a women federation of their own, from women who hesitated to be part of self-help groups because they didn't understand how the larger scheme of things work. There was always fear and apprehension about like the financial, decentralized financial aspect that you're talking about. I think SHG is one of those timeless models which has evolved over a period of time, but still there are a lot of mental blocks in women, and women are skeptical because there are a lot of things that's happened around it. So today they've come a long way in the 2.5 years. They are ready to own a brand, so we are going through a process of branding for them. They are ready to explore markets on their own. They understand Amazon, they understand Swiggy, they understand many things. They are ready to come to farmers markets like Ragikana on their own. So they are all set for all this. You live in a place where you have many more things to manage. It's not just that you need employment. You are living with elephants, you are living with other social issues. There is still oppression. Women are still not able to be assertive in many areas. So how can we bring all this into it? We are still taking baby steps because it's not easy for rural women to be talking about any kind of an empowerment issue, even having conversations around that. Without having reservations on, should I share these in a forum? Will these people be okay, or will they be judgmental about our issues? So it takes a lot of time and efforts to be working with them. So, and neither are we competent enough. Like I only know it's important, but then it's like every time we are having these dialogues, we are also learning a lot on how do we actually make sense of all this. Yeah. So that's one of those examples in Buffalo Back that we have been doing. But yeah, coming back to the basics of Buffalo Back, we did start with markets. 10 years, this year, April, we will complete 10 years of being in the market space. Because that's what made sense 10 years ago. 10 years ago, when we were trying to understand agriculture, we were trying to understand how the practice of agriculture makes sense without using chemicals, or rather even figuring out why we don't need to use pesticides and fertilizers. External inputs are not required. So one thing that we realized in interacting with farmers who were practicing organic farming, it was normal. It was not most of the farmers that I met 15 years ago, it was normal for them to do organic farming. It was not a vanity. It was not a process of some scheme transition, some NGO. Some places, yes, NGOs had made a difference, but many individual farmers, it was natural and normal for them to do organic farming here. And they had also not probably looked at a situation of creating a separate identity for their products. They would just give it in the regular market. They would grow ragi by using their the cow dung or a compost-based manure, but then they didn't bother to find alternate markets because it didn't exist. So the opportunities were lesser, so the farmers were not really exploring on where can we have a separate counter for us or a separate space for us which will. So that's when we started thinking about farmers markets, and the first thing we did as a bunch of volunteers who had day jobs, Monday to Friday we had corporate jobs. But on Saturdays and Sundays, we really wanted to do something around being able to talk to consumers, because we were living in Bangalore. It made sense to be interacting with people in Bangalore. So at around the same time, a few things fell in place, and Lalbagh Nurserymen Association were given a retail space. So that's when we started on a very small scale, where all our personal vehicles, cars became transport vehicles. So we would, some of us would drive this 50, 100 kilometers to either a Gauribidnur or someplace in Magadi or someplace in Ramnagar. So we would fill our cars with sopu, vegetables and rice, dal, whatever these organic farmers had, whatever quantity they had. Even if it was 10 kgs, 20 kgs, we would just fill our cars with it. We would all come to Lalbagh on a Saturday and Sunday morning, and talk to people who would come walking there. We would run market in 9 places 10 years ago. So the markets that we had in these places were all based on trust. There was no big dialogues on certification. And if there were questions, consumers would come with a lot of questions. One is, of course, they would see this huge difference in the produce when they cook with it or they use it. They would see this difference that organic was definitely different looking, different tasting, feeling different from the regular conventional produce. But the other questions that we were all trying to answer was to understand the nuances of organic farming and understand, why is it still not, we know, now we understand it's healthy, why is it still not bigger? Or why is it not available everywhere? Were the questions we answered for the first 3-4 years. And that was what consumers were also asking about, because we would have consumers coming from Yelahanka to Malleshwaram or from Whitefield to Indranagar and buying. And trying to make sense of buying monthly rations and trying to access fresh fruits and vegetables once a week at least. And many of them didn't want to use refrigerators. So these were those problem statements. These were the things that were there. And then the need for these structures or organizations which will actually do something meaningful, because we knew we were doing a lot of things, but then we didn't know where we were contributing to. Of course, the 250 farmers that we work with, they are happy working with us. It's been 10 years of relationship with them. They are happy working with us. We have 100 plus families coming and buying from us. I think all of them have been with us through the journey. I don't think anybody has dropped off buying from Buffalo Bag. So all this is something which is measurable, but then we were looking at, because we were scale hours, we said there is something else that we should look at. And this, I think, at that point, my professional qualification of being a chartered accountant was helpful, where we shifted into advocacy. And that is PGS Organic Council. So PGS Organic Council is an advocacy platform. But we are working on the public decision space. We work with governments, we work with local governments, state governments, and the central governments, where we hope we always push ourselves on the table to hold our space. And we want to be heard. We want to say a few stories, even if it is small. So we are working closely with state governments. We are working with the central government. And today, in my personal capacity, I am in a couple of committees in the Ministry of Agriculture. We had to push ourselves and we had to get our space there to be able to tell things that we are learning on ground. Yeah. Our strength lies in this, in being able to tell our stories with tremendous amount of confidence, even if it is a small story of 3,500 people in a population like India's, and making ourselves felt relevant and important in the larger scheme of things and wanting to belong here. So we now have around 25 members in PGS Organic Council. It's a proper member-driven committees run setup, but we also bring a lot of best practices in terms of managing an institution into it so that we are delivering something concrete. So we prepare a lot of white papers. We call them policy papers or white papers, relevant for each like it depends on which government should hear it out and implement it. If it is for a local government, if it is for a group of panchayats to execute something, so we work with them and we give this white paper to the panchayat. Or if it is for the state government, we do it for the state government. Currently we are active, very active in 2 states, Tamil Nadu and Orissa, which is seeing phenomenal changes in the way they are looking at agriculture and food. So just last week, Tamil Nadu government announced that millets will form part of the PDS system, the public distribution of. So that's come after a lot of interactions with them, lot of proving points and asking and demanding for a lot of structural changes. So these 25 organizations contribute real XP. We call it action research because otherwise research is very academic in agriculture, in social science also, because agriculture, it took me years to understand agriculture or growing food or selling food is not just about growing and selling. There are so many social aspects around it. So these social factors are something that we keep integrating into these organizations. Yeah? So this is one part, but the whole market bit of it has been so important for us because when we were exploring all this, you obviously needed to pay some salaries to people. You needed money to run all this. And during our initial years where we were not that great at raising funds or being able to get some support, market has sustained us. And I think we are like all the time grateful for these 100 families who have been like just buying out of trust, because we keep trying to tell them, so whatever you've been doing has actually done a lot more than just this economic, that transactional benefit that you're giving to the farmers. We have been able to do a lot more. We have been able to explore a lot more, push ourselves a little more. Yeah? So now we have a very aware crowd which is asking these questions on, okay, now if you're offering tomatoes to me at 8 rupees a kg, can you tell me how much are you paying the farmer? And if he is getting 1 rupee a kg, is it enough for him? For the efforts that goes into growing tomatoes, harvesting them and sending them to you, grading them also and sending them to you. Yeah. So these are questions that are being asked. So that's where the idea of this fair trade and these questions where consumers are a little more aware. So we said this is time to actually think about, again, a very, very timeless concept of a buying cooperative. These buying clubs, of course, happened for various reasons, to get these bargains and being able to collectively, the convenience of a different order, not like the Swiggy convenience maybe, but a convenience of a different order. So we are trying to bring those concepts of a cooperative, of a shared economy, where whatever questions you have today, and if you have a very valid question, you could raise it in that forum and actually be part of finding an answer to that. We have moved out of that idea of business decisions being important for the market. So that is where, that's the phase we are in terms of the market. And I think by sharing the PGSOC and the Vasudha story, I just wanted to also tell on the other things, those incidental things, seemingly incidental, but the core is the market for us because it has supported us financially. And it has given us the confidence that, people are there with us. It's like 100 families is not small number for us, for the way we have been. We are extremely low-key. We have never figured out how to advertise, how to market ourselves. We have not spoken to our neighbors about what we do. We allow people to explore, find us. It's like there are people who have come and told us this is like one treasure hunt for us. So being what we are, I think it's phenomenal to have 100 families with us today. And these 100 families have contributed to all that we are able to explore today and where we have reached. And today that space that we have in the Ministry of Agriculture also, I think all the confidence has come with these interactions, these learnings that we have collectively picked up over a period of time. Yeah. And also I think the advantage is in our team, none of us come from an academic background of agriculture or social science. So we have been like constantly learning, just being in this space. Sorry, I think I spoke for very long.
No, you must be tired.
No,
we enjoyed it.
No, I'm not. Not really tired. It's nice to be speaking to people also.